Okay, I'm going to try to show you how to update the tuning pitch calibration of your WaveBoy. You're going to have to do this if you're upgrading to 0.65 and you're on an older version, because this is completely different. So this is like the latest way of doing it. The first thing I need to do is download the SD card file. You can see I've made several takes of this video, so hopefully this one sticks. And then you're going to grab it. I'm on Linux, but you can, this works basically the same way on Windows or OS X. There's this new tuning file here, and if we open it, we'll see it looks like the old one if you've ever looked at the old one, except this has a bunch of different numbers and there's a bunch of zeros in it. So we're going to take this file and move it to the WaveBoy, copy it, and I'm going to replace it because I've already tuned mine, but I'm going to retune it for the purposes of this video, and remove the SD card. Now I'm going to jam it into the WaveBoy, and we'll actually do the tuning process. Over on the WaveBoy side of things, I've got my WaveBoy hooked up, I've got the envelopes turned off, so it's just making a drone. Now I'm going to go over to Config, and then Tuning, and let me turn the audio back up a little bit. I did that on purpose because you can see when you go into tuning, it's a different pitch because the tune knob ends up being disabled. So you can't use that during tuning, and actually don't really want to because, well, I'll show you in a second here. The next thing I'm going to do is you can see I'm at C2. So when I go over to renoise, you can see I just have a little, just a quick test pattern just runs through C2 through B6. And so I'm going to send it C2. I think I was already on it, but just for funsies. And then all I'm going to do, to just keep this simple, is to press the right button once, and I'll turn up the audio so you can kind of hear what that ends up sounding like. So essentially you can see I'm going through each note, and then I'm sending it the equivalent note over on the renoise side, and then all I'm really doing is just pressing this right button. So I'm going to go through that whole thing since I have to retune my own WaveBoy, just for the sake of example, and I'll come back with some like guest closing thoughts or whatever. Okay, and there you go. It is now basically tuned. So the one thing here is you have to save the settings. So to do that, you press the left button. And to leave the menu, you press and hold the left button, which also, anecdotally, also saves the settings. So that does mean if you do not want to save what you just did, you basically need to power cycle the WaveBoy. I did it that way because I couldn't find a better way to do it with just two knobs to just like escape it. It seemed like the reasonable way since you shouldn't have to do this very often. So now if I go back, just go to wave mode, and you can see tuning knob works, and I can also sort of verify that things are at least relatively in tune now that I messed it up with the knob. And you probably couldn't see me off camera there, but I was adjusting the tune knob like down here. Where is I? Down here. To just illustrate that you now have a much wider frequency range that you can use with the tune knob than you did in the previous firmware, which is cool, and it should actually properly track, which it didn't really used to all that well. Also note that you didn't need to use a tuner. I didn't use one over here. When I calibrate real WaveBoys, I will, although I don't really think you need it because oops, get back to the main menu. I'm looking through a camera, so I can't see this super well. Okay, so here, if you were tuning with a tuner, you might notice that the values that you see, I guess the reference values for the WaveBoy and then like what you're seeing in the tuner, there might be some drift. I have found, I I don't think you really need to adjust it, but if you really wanted to, you could, and by instead of pressing this button, you can actually turn this knob left and right, just like you could with the previous tuning. And that will adjust the offset for the ADC values, which basically makes it pick a higher or lower pitch. I haven't done a lot of extensive testing on it because I don't really think it's going to be needed for most people. And I found that even not doing that, the tracking is just so much better than it used to be. And it's also like really fast. You can see that took me, I don't know, a couple minutes and I was going slow. So yeah, it's much improved. I'm really happy with it. But as I mentioned, unfortunately, folks that already have WaveBoys that want the firmware will have to go through that process. The one thing I didn't mention also is if you're building a DIY WaveBoy or you somehow lost your SD card, you're going to have to pre-calibrate the unit. I'm not covering that here. I will cover that in maybe another video. The instructions are on the WaveBoy manual. I'm hoping most people don't have to do that. It's not hard, but I really just wanted to cover what most people are going to need to do when you update the firmware. You will not need to use the full calibration process just to do what I just did. So most folks can ignore that. If you're not one of those folks, then there's instructions on the actual WaveBoy online manual and the steps that you need to do, and they're probably optional. It just gives you a better baseline for then being able to do further adjustments with the tuning process, which should give a little bit more accuracy. Although again, it's just so much better than it used to be. I'll have if you're still somehow listening, I'll have a blog post covering some of that when the actual firmware comes out, 0.65, and which details like what was actually going on there between that tuning and this tuning, because it's much simpler, it's faster, it's just all around better. So that's it for now.